Hey everyone, welcome back. So this time we're going to do a deep dive that is, well, honestly, pretty dark.
Yeah, this one is intense.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. Interviews, court documents, news reports,
Yeah.
all about Diddy, Sean Combs.
A name everyone knows.
Exactly. But we are going to be looking at Diddy from a very specific angle, through the eyes of a young Usher.
Who lived with Diddy?
Yeah, back in the day,
It's wild. We're talking the early 90s, the golden age of hip-hop.
Bad Boy Records was massive,
And Diddy was at the top.
creating this image of extravagance, excess.
hmm
And we'll see, maybe some really dark stuff.
Yeah, and it's crazy when you think about Usher at that time. You know, he was this young, aspiring artist trying to find his way in the music world.
Totally. And then he gets thrown into this world that Diddy created. It's such a stark contrast.
Totally. And it wasn't just Diddy. Usher was around Biggie, Lil, Kim, Mary J. Blige.
Everyone who was anyone in hip-hop.
Exactly. That whole scene.
Usher described Diddy's home as just constant parties. Women everywhere. Like just nonstop.
And not just like regular parties.
Right? He talked about seeing some, quote, curious things, end quote.
Curious things. What does that even mean?
Yeah, and keep in mind, Usher was like 13 at the time.
13. Imagine being 13 and seeing curious things at P. Diddy's house. And now knowing what we know about the allegations against Diddy, it's
It
just...
takes on a whole new meaning, right?
It does.
Yeah.
When you consider that Usher has talked about walking in on orgies, staying up late partying, just being exposed to a world that's so far beyond what a 13-year-old should even know about.
That's a lot more than just some wild teen parties, right?
Yeah.
As a 13-year-old kid trying to make it in the music business and he gets dropped into this crazy world.
It makes you think, was this just the rock and roll lifestyle?
Or was there something more going on?
Something darker.
That's the big question.
It is, and it gets even more complicated when you consider what Diddy is being accused of now: sexual assault, sex trafficking, abuse of power.
And to be clear, these aren't just rumors. This is serious stuff. Diddy is currently awaiting trial.
Facing very real legal consequences.
So we have to look at Usher's stories with fresh eyes, knowing all of this.
What he might have just brushed off as partying back then could actually be huge red flags.
Totally. And remember when Usher totally wiped his social media clean?
People were freaking out, connecting it to all this Diddy stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone was speculating. Like, what does this mean? What is Usher hiding?
He said his accounts were hacked, but...
A lot of people didn't buy it.
Right. Like, come on.
It just added more fuel to the fire.
Totally. So we have Usher and his experiences, but this story goes way beyond just him.
Let's take a step back and look at the music industry as a whole.
It's no secret that power dynamics are a huge issue in this world.
Yeah, you have these massive power imbalances between established figures like Diddy and young aspiring artists.
And sadly, that creates opportunities for exploitation. And Usher's story isn't the only one that raises questions about Diddy's behavior.
You're talking about Ty Stiklorius.
Exactly. The music producer who wrote that really powerful op-ed for the New York Times about her experience at one of Diddy's parties.
She described being led to a bedroom by one of Diddy's associates and basically having to talk her way out of a really bad situation.
She didn't press charges or name names at the time.
But looking back, she sees it as part of a larger pattern.
Right.
And then you add in over 100 other accusers, represented by attorney Tony Busby.
It starts to paint a very disturbing picture.
Yeah, a picture of a culture where abuse was normalized, where lines were blurred, and Diddy allegedly used his power to take advantage of people. So bringing it back to Usher, what impact do you think those early experiences living in that environment had on him? He obviously learned a ton about the music business, about building a brand.
At what cost?
That's what we're trying to figure out, right?
That's the heart of this whole thing.
We're trying to understand how those formative years shaped Usher, both the good and the bad.
On the one hand, he credits Diddy for his success, but on the other hand, how do you come out of that world unscathed?
It makes you wonder about all those mentor-mentee relationships in the music industry, especially when it's as high stakes as it is.
Yeah. Is it possible for exploitation to be intertwined with guidance?
Is there some kind of Faustian bargain at play here? Did Usher have to compromise part of himself to achieve the success he has?
These are tough questions.
We're going to have to dig deep to even begin to answer them.
Yeah, this is going to be a long one. Yeah, some really tough questions. And to even start to understand those potential compromises, I think we have to dig into the specifics of these allegations against Diddy.
Yeah, because these aren't just some vague rumors. We're talking about real detailed accounts from a lot of people willing to go public with their stories. over 100 accusers.
And it's not just the number, it's the time frame. These allegations go back decades, some of them all the way to the 90s.
So we might be looking at a pattern of behavior,
Hmm.
not just isolated incidents.
Exactly. It's a long history.
So let's get into it. What exactly is Diddy accused of? What are the charges?
Well, they range from sexual assault to drugging coercion and even sex trafficking.
Sex trafficking, that
Yeah, that involves using force, fraud, or coercion to exploit someone for sexual purposes. It's a very, very serious crime, and it often has devastating consequences for the victims.
wow. This paints a completely different picture of Diddy than what we see in the media.
It does. It makes you wonder what was really happening behind the scenes at all those parties in those inner circles.
Was this darker side just hidden from view?
Maybe? The allegations suggest that Diddy might have used his wealth and status to create this sense of impunity, like he was above the law.
And to make matters worse, attorney Tony Busby, who represents these alleged victims, says that at least 25 of them were minors at the time.
Minors, so young people, possibly even children exposed to this environment.
It's awful.
It is. It really highlights the power dynamics here. How someone vulnerable, especially someone trying to break into the music industry, could be taken advantage of.
It makes you think about the impact on these people, the emotional scars, the potential trauma they might be carrying.
And it's important to remember that these are still allegations. Nothing has been proven in court, but the sheer number and the consistency of the stories.
Yeah, you can't ignore that.
No, you can't.
And Diddy was denied bail, which is...
That's huge. Usually someone with his wealth and resources would get bail, but the judge considered him a potential flight risk.
wow, so this is really serious. His reputation and career are on the line, but also his freedom.
This trial is set for May 2025, and it could have massive consequences.
It's months away, so there's going to be so much speculation.
Yeah, this case is going to be in the news a lot, and it has the potential to completely shake up the music industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But while we focus on Diddy, we can't lose sight of the alleged victims.
they're the ones who've suffered the most.
It takes a lot of courage to come forward with allegations like these, especially against someone as powerful as Diddy.
It does. Their bravery is inspiring, and it's so important to create a space where they feel safe to share their stories.
The Me Too movement has been huge in that sense.
It's empowered so many victims to come forward.
They know they're not alone and that they deserve to be heard.
And it's about more than just being heard. It's about breaking the silence, holding those in power accountable.
We're having important conversations now about the culture that allowed this kind of abuse to go on for so long.
It's a potential turning point. People aren't willing to turn a blind eye anymore.
Okay, so we've talked about the bigger picture, but I think it's important to hear some specific details to really grasp the gravity of the situation.
Yeah. One of the most disturbing accounts is from a woman who wants to stay anonymous. She alleges that Diddy assaulted her in a music studio when she was 9 years old.
9 years old. That's just
I know, it's just horrific. How does something like that go unreported for so long?
the power of fear, maybe manipulation,
Mm.
especially with a young child involved.
Imagine the pressure, the confusion, potential threats, intimidation, all the things that might have stopped her from speaking out.
And the guilt and shame a child might feel.
It's heartbreaking.
There's another account from a woman who claims Diddy drugged and assaulted her at a party in the early 2000s.
She says she was unconscious for most of it and only figured out what happened afterwards through other people.
God, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how many other victims might be out there.
People who are too scared or ashamed to come forward.
It's definitely a possibility. And it just shows how important it is to have that safe space for victims to tell their stories without being judged or fearing consequences.
You're absolutely right. These stories are difficult to hear, but they're crucial for understanding what Diddy is accused of and how this case could impact the entire industry.
And it raises the question, how much do those around Diddy know?
His inner circle. What did they see? Was there a culture of complicity or silence that allowed this to go on?
It's hard to believe no one noticed or suspected anything. So what have people who knew Diddy, who work with him, said about all of this?
Well, a lot of his former associates and collaborators have stayed quiet.
Maybe out of loyalty or fear.
Possibly. But there are a few who've spoken out, and they've hinted at a darker side to Diddy.
It's like Mace, the rapper who was signed to Bad Boy back in the 90s. He's talked about the dark side of the industry, and even hinted at his own experiences with Diddy.
Right. He hasn't directly accused Diddy of anything, but he's suggested that there was a lot of exploitation and abuse happening at Bad Boy.
And his words have weight coming from someone who was there.
They do. It adds another layer to this whole story. It makes you think there might be even more going on than we realize.
It brings us back to that question, how does power corrupt?
And what responsibility do those in positions of influence have to protect the vulnerable?
These are big
Mm.
questions, and we're going to need some time to unpack this whole story.
It's complex and disturbing, but also really important.
This whole story has just got so many layers to it, so many questions. And the trial coming up in May 2025, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
What do you think could happen after all this? Not just for Diddy, but for the music industry as a whole.
I mean, the implications are huge. If Diddy is convicted, it could be a major turning point for the industry, like a real wake-up call in terms of accountability.
You think it could set a precedent for holding other powerful figures responsible?
I do. Yeah, I think it could really empower more victims to come forward, knowing that even someone with Diddy's level of wealth and influence can be held accountable.
And we still have months to go before the trial starts.
Months of media attention and speculation. Everyone in the industry is going to be watching this case closely.
It's like this whole situation has opened a Pandora's box.
I think so. It's not just about criminal charges either.
Hmm.
We could see a wave of civil lawsuits coming out of all this.
Like a reckoning for the industry's past.
Yeah, facing the consequences of that culture of silence.
So do you think this could actually lead to lasting change? Could we see a shift in those power dynamics, a move towards an environment where artists feel safer and more respected?
It's possible.
Mm,
Maybe this case will be the thing that finally forces the industry to confront its problems and create better systems for protecting vulnerable people.
I hope so. But even if Diddy is acquitted, his reputation has already taken a massive hit.
Oh, yeah. He's facing so much negative publicity right now, it's hard to imagine him ever fully escaping this.
It just goes to show that fame and fortune don't last forever. Your true legacy comes from integrity and respect, not money and hits.
It makes you think about the price of Diddy's success. Was there a point where his ambition and his drive for power crossed the line?
That's a question that goes beyond just Diddy. It's about the dangers of fame, the seductive nature of power, and the responsibility that comes with it.
It's a story we've seen play out so many times. The power of fame can really warp people's perceptions, create this sense of invincibility.
And make them think they can get away with anything.
Yeah, it blurs the lines between right and wrong.
It's a warning to anyone chasing fame. Success without integrity means nothing in the end.
So how do we as a society redefine success? How do we create a culture that values empathy and respect and accountability alongside ambition and achievement?
It's a conversation we need to have, not just in the music industry, but everywhere.
It's about recognizing that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their status or their achievements.
That's a powerful thought. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this question. What does Diddy's story tell you about the price of fame and the responsibility that comes with power?
What lessons can we learn from all of this? And how can each of us in our own lives contribute to creating a world where integrity and respect are valued?
It's a lot to think about, but these are the conversations that can lead to real change. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a story that's both captivating and incredibly disturbing. We hope it's given you something to reflect on and maybe even inspired you to help build a more just and equitable world.